Hey Maggie,
How
um,
are you? Hi,
hey, not too bad actually. Thanks for asking. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Good, good. And I think it'd be cool to sort of like take a step back before we talk about your upcoming match.
Of
Um,
course.
for you, you're someone that sort of started the sport quite late compared to a lot of people. So,
hmm
do you mind sort of going into a little bit of detail about how you found jiu-jitsu and when you decided to sort of dive into it full time kind of thing?
Yeah, of course. I mean, first and foremost, I've been an athlete my entire life. There's never not been a season or a year or a time where I haven't been competing and participating in something. Growing up, it was always like American sports, fall, winter, spring, like in school, whatever. I actually played Division I field hockey in California. And then my uncle is an old school MMA promoter. And he always says like I was the son he never had. And so he was always like kind of the athlete push in me. And when I graduated college and when I was in California, he's from Hawaii and he's like, okay, like, do you want to continue school and get your master's or do you want to try MMA? And I was like, okay, like I've never not had a sports schedule. I don't know what I'll do without one. I go, so let's do it. So I went to Hawaii and the goal was MMA. From the beginning, I was much more dominant and natural on the ground. Um, and then when I really started like falling in love with jujitsu, there was this other school on the island and they were going to like the IBJJF competitions, which I didn't really know what those were. I was doing like Naga and like the local ones in Hawaii, which my uncle wanted me to do just to get used to competing and doing some weight cuts and stuff. Um, and then the team that I was kind of just going to open mats there, but they were going to Pan Am's, and that's when I realized what IBJJF kind of was. And then I ended up going with them the next time to, I think it was the San Antonio Open, and I got gold there at my first tournament. And then one of the coaches from the school was like, "Ah, you should really go to Worlds. You should really try to go to Worlds." And not really knowing like what that meant. So blue belt 2017, I go to the pyramid and I actually lost. I think I lost my second round. I believe I won the first one. I think I lost my second round. And like solely because I didn't listen to my coach. And I didn't like that feeling at all. So that was like one of the first motivators I feel like in my success. And then the other one was the Canutos, actually, Raquel and Hinato. Raquel's from Hawaii. So she was a blue belt when I was a white belt out there. And she was actually one that called me and was like, hey, like we have a room in Vegas, like you should come here. But that same world, Hinato won brown belt. And I remember him like dropping to his knees and celebrating. And that just like made it really real for me. And I was like, okay, like this is people's lives. Like people take this really seriously. So on top of hating that feeling of losing, seeing somebody all of those feelings from winning and like how serious they took it, it was just like, okay, like this is something like if I commit to, I really feel like I could do. And being on a team sport, like I've never done an individual sport. So I think that was one of the things that I really liked about it was like it was on me. Like it wasn't their fault for missing the ball. They didn't make a bad pass. Where it's like when you're on a team, it's not just your responsibility what happens. So I think that's something that I actually liked, whereas a lot of people might feel the pressure. I liked that I didn't have to rely on anybody else. So after that moment, I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. And I liked the lifestyle of it better. Like I liked the sparring and everything about MMA, but I really liked my career too, which was strength and conditioning. And to do MMA, you really don't have a balance. You have to train so many different arts. So what I liked with jujitsu is that I could focus on that and not necessarily make it my career, but it would add to my career and that I could still pursue my career outside of jujitsu too. So everything kind of just came into place in the right time in 2000 and um it was 2017 when I started competing IBJJF. So it was kind of just, yeah, just everything aligned at the right time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the same thing that happens for a lot of people, even if they start at a young age or an older age. Like you said, things just sort of happen that way. Like it doesn't, no one really sets out to become a world champion from day one, you know?
Right.
Um,
Yeah, you have no idea what's going to happen.
yeah, exactly. And then when you mentioned MMA as well, is that something that you ever sort of like pursued competitively, or were you just training at the time?
So I had two kickboxing matches. My uncle was like really big on, okay, you're going to become a really good purple belt. You know, you're going to do just striking matches to get used to. He really wanted me to be well-rounded if I was going to be doing MMA rather than like, oh, she's a striker. Oh, she's a jiu-jitsu fighter. So that was his biggest thing was about being well-rounded. So I never actually got to the MMA part of it before just falling in love with jujitsu and letting that kind of take over.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's a good approach as well to get you sort of, like you said, sort of like well-rounded, so you're not really stuck anywhere.
Right. And it's different with MMA too because it's hard to get fights, right? Whereas I'm used to like here's your schedule, we have a game every weekend, where it's like in MMA or whatever type of those more um kind of you have to find someone, it's a little bit harder. So that was the other thing that I didn't like too, because after the kickboxing, the next step was MMA, and finding matches was just hard. And it was something else. Like, I don't think I would have had the discipline to train without a match or to know like, oh, I'm only going to be competing twice a year. I didn't like that aspect of MMA either.
Yeah, and that's a big difference with jiu-jitsu. Like you said, with IBJJF tournaments, you know when the tournament is, you sign
You can
up and
compete every weekend if you want. Yeah.
yeah. And then obviously it was quite kind of high profile for you about 2 years now, I think it was, where you moved to ATOS.
Yeah.
Can I ask, how did you find that move? You know, was it how did you sort of like fit in down there and did it all go well?
Yeah, no, it was a really easy choice for me. Fight sports, of course, was somewhere I thought I was going to be forever, not just there, but have one of my own fight sports one day. Like that was the plan kind of at the time before, you know, hit the fan. Um, but right when all of that happened, so Angelica and I don't even know when the relationship happened. I think I actually went back recently and looked, but I felt that I was always in a very similar role as her. So I would always reach out to her about, okay, what's the best way to deal with this situation with my girls' team or with parents that do this? Like, I could always go to her for anything. Like, we, of course, we're always in the same area, always around each other. I fought many, 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 many ATOS girls. So Andre was always, on the opposing side of me. But I always had a very good relationship with them. And I obviously, her leadership is something that I've always looked up to, and not even just as a female, because as much as like I am girl power all the way, for me, equality isn't segregating, right? And she has just as much respect from the males at her academy as she does the females. And that's something that I think a female leader represents. Sometimes I feel like we almost get too feminist where it becomes it's not equality anymore. You're trying to put one above the other. So that was something that I really, really always admired and tried to, seek advice and knowledge and wisdom from her, was to find that balance between like, yes, you're a female in a very male dominant world, and you're not just where you are because of who your husband is, you're where you are because of the person you are. So that was she was definitely one of the big reasons why I joined the team. It was an easy choice for me, and the second that I went to them, they open arms accepted me, and of course my husband in as well. So it was a good choice, good move.
Yeah, well, it's definitely worked out well so far. Obviously, the other sort of like main storyline for you in recent years was back in Nogi Worlds 2023. You sort of hung it up, decided to retire. Can I ask what was the motivation behind that? Because you're still well in prime sort of like competitive years, you know?
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different factors that go into it, and it was something that I also was very okay with. It wasn't like it was not forced in a sense. I wasn't good enough anymore, but I wasn't in a place where in my life that I could give enough to be good enough. And I went, obviously through, I was undefeated in the colored belts, in my division. I've lost in absolutes, but in my division. And when I got to black belt, not only were they throwing every single world champion possible at me, like I remember my first super fight was actually Luisa Montero. And at the time, she had been a black belt twice as long as I'd been doing jujitsu, So when I got to black belt, it was very clear that a lot of the success that I had at the colored belts came a lot from, my strength, my athleticism, my resilience, my mental health in a sense of believing in myself. But once I got to black belt, it's like the technique level didn't match. And that's where you need to put the time in. I was lucky to have all the other stuff, but the
Yeah.
time that you have to put in to be on the same level of these girls, that it is full time for them. Most of the girls that I'm competing against, they eat, sleep, and breathe jujitsu, and I was like at the point where I was just almost numb, and when I was going into my black belt career and I was still at Fight Sports, I feel like there was a lot of pressure to fight. And when I would lose, it was kind of like just, oh, just keep going, just keep fighting, just keep showing up. Like I wasn't told, like, not, oh, let's take a break for a second and like maybe fix these things, or let's fix this and go again. Like it was literally just like, keep going. And it broke me down so mentally to the point where I didn't really believe in myself anymore. I was walking into matches kind of knowing that I was going to lose. And it did get to the point where it didn't feel right to me to be taking these opportunities. And not just with super fights, but at tournaments. These girls who are going for a world title, I'm going to be a tough fight, win or lose. And it didn't feel right for me to give these women a tough fight when I didn't have the same goal as them, when I didn't want to be a world champion anymore. Um, and then, once I separated myself from that situation, I really got into a better place mentally, and I started to fall in love with learning jujitsu again. And I kind of just realized like I don't have the time or energy to train for 4 10-minute rounds, 5 10-minute rounds at a tournament that I'm paying for. Especially when I have two businesses, right? Like that's what I say when these girls are eat, sleep, train jujitsu. Maybe they're teaching, that might be their job. But I have two different businesses, and it's something that at the time I didn't have the capacity to be able to be on the same level. So at the time, it really felt like the right thing to do. It was something I was super at peace with in a sense of being able to go and watch and not be like, oh, I wish I was out there. So I'm still happy, that I made that choice, and I still am now retired from the IBJJF in a sense of the adult division. I don't have the time you can't even really prepare because you don't know who's going to fight, who you're going to fight, So when it comes to me competing, super fights are much easier, not easier, but they work for me because I can prepare for one person. I have time for that. I have time to prepare for one person's game.
Yeah. And is
Yeah.
that what sort of like tempted you to come out of, because like you said, even though you're still retired from IBJJF tournaments, obviously you had that match 2 3 months ago now. Sorry, a little longer than that against Giovanna.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah. Last month, actually. It was last month.
last month, sorry, there's a bit longer.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was when you sort of like came back after about a year away. And
Yeah.
was that the reason they sort of tempted you? Was that like the first sort of like big super fight offer that had come around since then?
Yeah, I mean, that was the first thing, was like the fact that I was given the opportunity, because in this sport, you fall off one or two fights and you are forgotten. Like it's And I get it, you know, it's a really small sport. It's a small percentage of people who are going to be good. And if you can't stay at the top, you will get left behind, you know? So one of the things when I got offered that fight was like, okay, this wouldn't be happening if it wasn't for a reason, you know? And last year in January, we got mats for my strength and conditioning gym, and we would lay the mats out and pick them back up every single day, and we would have one class a day because people in my training facility started asking for jujitsu, knowing obviously what Luccas and I do. So when we did that, I started training, and it was actually the first time that I started learning from Luccas, my husband. And I think like 3 months into it, I was sitting with him and I started crying, and he was like, "What's wrong?" I'm like, "I've fallen in love with jujitsu again." You know, for me, being an athlete, especially at the elite level, when I grew up, I always had a coach. And it's so important, even in jujitsu, and we see it. All of the best teams in the world, it stems from the top. You know, every good coach has multiple world champions below them because that's what it takes to be an athlete. Like, there's no athlete without coach. And a lot of the way jujitsu is, it's like, okay, you can show up when you want, you can be late, you can do this, which, like, the way I was raised, it's like, oh, you're late, you're off the team. You know, there's no like, oh, I'm not going to practice today. And there is somebody there who is passionate about you getting better. You know, it's not focused on them. It's not like, oh, come be a part of my team and kind of like just follow behind me and cheer me on, and maybe you'll do okay. You know, it's like you need someone like I am going to, and it's not make you a champion, it's I'm going to teach you jujitsu. And I think a lot of my experience, and I know other people's experiences, is we get taught somebody's game. We don't get taught jujitsu. So I think being in the same place for so long, I felt like I was just on repeat of learning the same thing over and over and over again. So I'm really good at what I'm good at, you know, like I'm very, very good at certain things. But like my jujitsu stopped, like went from like A to G rather than A to Z. You know, there was a big wall. So once I, you know, was really learning jujitsu again, and she's now one of my black belts, she came to our school. You know, I told Luccas, I'm like, okay, I used to beat her. You know, I used to beat her all the time, and now she's, you know, one of the top girls. She was beating me, and I told Luccas, I go, if I get back to the place where, you know, I can be competing with and beating Leilani again, I think I'm going to be comfortable to compete. And I started with Masters Worlds, I did Masters Pans, and then I got the opportunity for the UFC Fight Pass. And it was, like I said, it was one of those things that I had to take the advantage of because I didn't think I was ever getting offered a super fight ever again. You know, like I saw that masters are kind of getting on the scene, but to be offered, you know, a match like that, I never thought was going to be. So I knew from the beginning that I wanted to take it. I was a mess, like a mess leading up to it, like to the point where I told Luccas, I was like, I'm not doing this again. Like, I'm not doing this again. Because I didn't know what to expect. My last super fight had been 4 years before that against Hafa El Gades at who's number one, which, you know, I froze during, as I did a lot of my matches during that time. But it's crazy because going into the match, the only thing I was confident in was my jujitsu for the first time. So I told him, I was like, I'm gonna go. I promise you, I'm confident. I'm freaking out internally because I don't know what to expect because it was a whole new athlete. It was a whole new person with the jiu-jitsu that I had. And I'm so glad it happened because now I'm so excited to keep becoming that new version of myself with jiu-jitsu now that I love it again and I'm passionate about it again, and it doesn't feel like it's what I'm supposed to be doing, right? Oh, fight, you know, it's not what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm back at a place where it's what I want to be doing, and it feels really good.
Yeah, that's a nice way to look at it as well. Like you said, rather than being like a job, something you have to do, is something you want to do and something you're sort of like eager to get back to, rather than being pushed into it, kind of thing.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah.
And can I ask, you mentioned something that I think stands out as maybe a little bit unusual sort of thing, but you and Lucas have been together for quite a while now, and you mentioned that it was only relatively recently that you actually started sort of like learning from him. Was there any particular reason that you sort of tried to keep that separate kind of thing up until now, or?
No, it's not that I wanted to keep it separate. It was just that when I've also just never had like time, because again, I
Yeah,
have businesses. So if I'm not working, I'm training. If I'm training, I'm working. So when I retired, that was one of the things I was most excited about. I was excited to like have long nails. I was kind of excited to be able to work out however I wanted, eat however I wanted for the first time in my life. And again, like I don't go crazy, but to be able to say yes to something when I want to. And that's just who I am as an athlete. I hold myself to a standard. So if I'm in athlete mode, what some people might be eating, I just won't. So it was just like, I think more so just enjoying the little things like that for the first time in my life. Because ever since I was 4 years old, I've been on a team and I've never stopped. So there was definitely a sense of enjoyment in the time when we opened my strength and conditioning champion fit. We didn't have mats at first, so Lucas was kind of like going around trying to find training wherever people would take him, wherever he could train, and that was just obviously more of his priority at the time. And then when we got mats, because I actually got mats for him, because he sacrificed a lot for me. And to be able to get back on our feet, I knew I could do it, so we opened a strength and conditioning gym. So it got to the point where it's like he was kind of trying to be me, and nobody wants that. Nobody wants to be someone else. So I was like, okay, you know what? Let's at least get you mats. So you can even if you have one person, you can train at our gym. And so when we got the mats, there was I actually train a rugby team for strength and conditioning. And in the off season, a bunch of them obviously were really like adept to doing it and very good at it. And I started to see them progress. And then a lot of the girls that trained with me, strength and conditioning, even though they trained jujitsu elsewhere, they kind of started asking too. So I think he started teaching like 2 classes a week or something on the mats. Before, at the beginning of last year, we started a class every night. So little by little, I just got on the mat. And really what it was realizing how much I didn't know. Like when he started teaching there, it could have been a leg drag or just like things that was never taught. Because I really do feel like, again, I was taught people's games. I was never taught well-rounded jujitsu. And I'm not the person to study. I'm not the person who's going to watch film and go and drill by myself. Like I said, I've been an athlete where I've always had a coach telling me what to do. So that was when I kind of started learning from him. I go, okay, look, all I want you to do is focus on jujitsu. I'm going to take on everything with Champion Fit there behind the scenes, study, train, teach, compete, do everything jujitsu, because after seeing his passion and how he transformed people into jiu-jitsu athletes or transform jiu-jitsu athletes to become just way better, I told him that it would pay off for us, and obviously clearly now 3 weeks into a jiu-jitsu school doing really well, it did. But yeah, no, it was mainly, the first thing was excited to learn again because I realized how much I didn't know, and
yeah,
then realizing what I was learning was connecting and sticking and transitioning. And I had options from everywhere. And I was submitting in the last 2 years that I've kind of been competing like with him. I've had more submissions than I had at my entire color belt career. So it's exciting, I'm like, okay, I didn't suck. Like I don't not have it anymore. I just didn't have the right tools and skills that I needed to be able to do that. So it wasn't a separation thing as much as it was like I really thought like just that was it for me. I don't have it anymore. But I just needed
yeah.
more knowledge.
That's cool as well. That's a nice like thing to hear. Obviously, now that you're coming back into like super fights and stuff like that, it's cool to be able to see, like you said, like a more technical version, submission and independent submissions, that sort of thing. that's
Yeah.
something that I think a lot of people would appreciate. You know what I mean? Like it's a good,
Oh yeah, no, when I watched back my last match, I was like, who is that? Because I've always been like IBJJF. I'm like, get me my advantage and I'm gonna ride this out to the death. Because it was always that. It was always, you just gotta win. You just gotta win. You just gotta win. You just gotta win. Whereas all Luccas cares about, whether it's me, whether it's himself, like that's what I love about him too as a leader, is if he loses, he really doesn't act any different than if he won. He just cares if he performed good jujitsu. And that's what he cares about as a coach, too, more than anything. And it takes a lot of the pressure off. It takes a
yeah,
lot of the pressure off when your coach isn't like, you got to do whatever it takes to win. You don't need a submission to win. You just have to win. It's like you say that, sounds like you're taking pressure off, but you're actually limiting your athlete from being comfortable.
yeah. And for you, obviously, now you've got your second sort of super fight coming up now, literally a couple of weeks.
Yes.
You're facing Helena Crevar at UFC Fight Pass.
Yes.
Can I ask, have you been preparing for her in any specific way? Like you mentioned, doing an easier preparation, easier for
Yeah.
single competitors. Is there anything you've been doing in the gym or with Luccas that you're sort of like looking to put into place now in that match?
Yeah, of course. It's definitely like a balance, and that's something that I never used to do. I never used to watch my opponents. I never used to have a game plan. And in my last, super fight, Luccas had it planned very, very, very specifically. And also my black belt Leilani, who fought Helena at the same time, literally the day before we fought, it was great because we went through the entire camp together. And the girl that I was fighting fit her style really well and vice versa. So it was a really good camp. And I didn't know that that camp was actually kind of like the preparation for this now. And of course, like watching Leilani's fight against Helena, she shut Helena's game down completely, you know. For 15 minutes. So that definitely gave me a little bit of confidence to accept the fight for sure. Even of seeing her compete a lot, that match specifically, when they offered me the fight, I was like, for sure. Because obviously, when you've trained with somebody who's fought somebody, it's kind of easier to gear how the match could go. And then when it comes to preparation now, specifically for her, it's a balance between both. It's being aware of Helena's strengths, which are truthfully pretty well rounded. But the great thing with Helena is there's so much content on her. Her game doesn't really have surprises, as much as she's just very well rounded. So we're focusing really so much more on my strengths and weaknesses to match that rather than like, don't do this with her, try to do this because of her. It's like we know her game, we know, where we want to be and where we don't want to be, but we're really focusing on what I'm going to do rather than what she's going to do. Because I think sometimes people walk into fighting Helena a little bit pulled back because they're worried about her game rather than focusing on their game. So that's kind of our approach with this is, let's focus on what I'm going to do with Helena, you know?
Yeah, I think you're right
Yeah.
as well. Not just her, but for a lot of like, ADCC medalists, that sort of thing. People go into matches with them really hyper focused, like you said, on what they're gonna do rather than
Like, oh, I'm gonna keep my legs away, but then you forget to do anything.
yeah, yeah. You either end up defending for the whole time, or they surprise you because they use something slightly different from what you're expecting, and then
And that's her. She can go to the back. She can go to close guard. She can go to the arms. People are like, oh, hide your legs. I'm like, I'm gonna hide all my limbs. Like,
and then with your sort of like career with UFC Fight Pass now, obviously you've done two events in a row. Are you looking to get back in with them in the future now, over the next couple of months, the rest of the year?
yeah, I'm definitely also at a point, in my career where I am going to pick and choose, what I want to do and what I don't want to do. I love flow grappling. I love who's number one, but I'm not going to fight 15 minutes. It's not something that I enjoy training because that's one of the biggest things for me right now is to make sure I enjoy training. Because like I said, Luccas isn't looking at how hard I'm training. He's not looking at how many times I'm training. He's looking at what I'm doing while I'm training. And if there's constant progression, then nothing else matters. Um, so that's one of the things for sure is I love the UFC Fight Pass because I love the rule set. I love how it's set up, right? It's a 6 minute submission only match, which is great. And then a 4 minute overtime. And they actually had it longer. I think it was 8 minutes and I almost want to say five. And they realized people waited too long to go. And you do see that with Who's Number One. It takes a very specific match for it to start like fire. But we waste a lot of time as spectators waiting for those first 5 minutes to go by at certain things. Even the 10 minutes, you know, at IBJJF, it just sometimes takes too long for people to get going. And I'm somebody that I can push a really solid pace for 6 minutes. So I think that fits my game really well. That's obviously one of the strategies too, is experience, strength, being a little bit older and mature than her, you know, being able to push the pace and the strength as well. So it fits really, like, I truthfully wouldn't want to fight Helena for 15 minutes if I'm telling the truth. And that's okay. You know, there might be other people I would want to, but right now the UFC Fight Pass is definitely my focus. One, because of that. Two, because I've worked with the UFC before on the other side for coaching, for Amanda Nunes, and everybody there loves their job. So it's not just a great experience as an athlete for what they provide, but who you're surrounded by. Like everybody I've met that works for the UFC is always happy, always helpful. It's very professional. You know, there's no favoritism, there's no loopholes, there's no this person gets this and this person gets this. They're very like black and white. You know, I don't want to like funnel it, but like it is what it is, you know, and I like that sense of security. So there's some other, you know, maybe events I would love to try. You know, I had a great time at Polaris. I would love to maybe get on One FC. Um, which I've talked to them a little bit. 80XC, I think, is a cool, the 3x3s. But yeah, I'm definitely way more particular with how I'm preparing because, like I said, it's easier for me to do super fights because I'm focused on Helena. I'm not focused on, okay, there's 20 people in my division. Like you can't really prepare for that. You can just prepare yourself. And so yeah, it's definitely a goal of mine to be able to stay with them. Hopefully do a contract with them at one point, but I'm not closed off to other events if it's something I want to do. But I'm definitely not just taking whatever.
And that's a nice position to be in as well, I think, is like you said, to be able to pick and choose and do the match you want under the conditions you want
Right,
and still
right.
have fun in training as well.
Right, because what's cool at the end of the day, it's like I have businesses, you know, I don't survive off of jujitsu, you know, I'm definitely back. It's gotten me kind of both of my businesses, you know, but now I'm at a place where it's like, okay, I don't, like I said, I don't have to do this. I don't need to do this. I want to do this.
And is there any specific matches you're actually looking forward to? Like, is there anyone that's sort of like caught your eye in recent months or years that you would want to face that maybe you haven't before, or any rematches for that matter?
Um, I haven't really thought about it too much. Not really. Like, I mean, this match against Helena, as much as I don't think it was very expected, I mean, I didn't expect it. I actually think I might have got offered it because I'm sure other people said no, because I know that's a thing, is people are saying no to her, which is silly because I know people talk about age all the time. And I'll joke about how this is the second teenager I'm fighting on the event. But but we're still doing the same job. You know, it's like when you go into an office, you're not like, oh, 17. You know, it's like, no, we signed a contract to do the same exact thing. So it's like, I don't care what age you are. She got second at ADCC. I don't know why anyone is turning down a match with her, you know? So I'm really excited, not only because of who she is, but I really do think our styles are going to match up very well. You know, I have, as much as she competes a lot, years or years, you know, and it's like I have a really good experience. You know, I'm really strong with the things that I do. I know people usually don't get tired at 17, but she's competing a lot, you know, and as much as the competition itself might not take a toll on her, the traveling, the people, this and that, you know, I definitely follow that. I definitely take that into account. I get to watch all of these events that she's fighting leading up to our match. But no, outside of I didn't, and I never thought I was gonna ever fight Helena, you know. So I'm really excited for that. But no, at this point, it's like I I'm not building up my career, you know? So for me, it's like if I get the opportunity and I'm in a good place, I'd be more than happy to take whoever it is.
Yeah, that makes sense. Again, like you said, because you're not relying on like this as a full-time job forever or
Right.
anything.
Right.
You can sort of say yes to a good opportunity without worrying about like brand
Right.
or anything like that.
And yeah, and like wouldn't be saying yes to any of these if I didn't believe I can win, you know, because I've done that before and that doesn't feel good. That is not a good place to be in. The preparation sucks. Everything about it sucks. People do not take matches that you are not confident about, regardless of pay, show, whatever it is. It'll never be worth it if you don't believe in yourself.
I think that's a nice point for anyone looking to compete as well, because I think that is surprisingly common that people take things that they're maybe not very well prepared for, sort of thing.
Mhm.
Um, that is pretty much everything I wanted to go through with you, though, Maggie. Is there anything that you want to say, or anyone you want to give a shout out to, or anything like that?
No, just obviously my husband, who's my coach, my biggest supporter, you know, the reason for the success I've been having and the success I will have, you know, win or lose. I'm ready to perform in that event. All of our students at Lira Jiu-Jitsu, our extended family of ATOS, you know, Andre and Angelica for being supportive and welcoming us with open arms. And of course, all of my fans and friends and family who follow and support. I literally wouldn't be, you know, where I am without that today. So no, I got nothing else to say.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time as well, and good luck against the name of that one
Thank
UFC
you
fight.
so much. I appreciate that.
Yes, thank you. Take care.
See you.